Welcome back. This is part 2 of my chat with Cory Zanoni about leveraging social media for creatives. Now, if there's one thing I've taken away from this chat, it's that there is no one-size-fits-all when it comes to social media, because we're still inventing the possibilities. So that means with a little creativity, we can still carve out a niche for ourselves to support that thing that we do in the real world. And it's got to be right up our alley. We're writers, musicians, performers. And I find it comforting to know that there are concrete strategies to help us on our way. Let's get to the chat. So if we're starting out, do we identify an audience and try to anticipate what that audience wants and fulfill it? Or do we do what feels right to us and hope it finds an audience?
A bit of both to a certain degree. I think it's easier to have a hypothesis. Like, okay, I am trying to serve this particular group, this particular audience, and I'm going to try and do that by doing X, Y, and Z. I'm trying to help aspiring actors. I'm going to do that by posting about stagecraft, audition tips, a third category that I can't quite think of right now. And I'll do that for 6 months. I've made 10 videos in that time. These ones have gone well. These ones haven't gone as well. Okay, I've learned something here. You've learned that either this audience isn't the right audience or that X, Y, and Z is the wrong way to go about it.
So we don't really want to try to be everything to everybody. It's better to drill down to a niche
100%.
of some kind.
Yeah. If nothing else, it helps you delineate yourself from other people. If I'm narrowly trying to do this one thing, it's easier to go, okay, follow me for this one thing. Here is the offer. Here is the pitch. This will give my audience a reason to come back. The challenge is finding that niche. Which I think, and there are some really helpful ways to do that we can get into.
Okay, so yeah, let's follow that. How do we find a niche?
I think the most simple starting point, I saw this from a writer online, I think Nicholas Cole, he's kind of in the digital writing grift on LinkedIn. One of the ways he recommends going about it is think about all of the problems and all of the troubles you've overcome or solved. Think about all the skills you developed. Think about all the things you've learned over the past 2 years. List them all out. And in listing those out, you'll go, okay, here's a category, like for me personally, here's a category about brand development online. Here's a category about copywriting tips. Here's a category about figuring out what the hell to do with your life now that you're in your mid-30s and been doing a career for 10 years and going, oh, okay, how did I get here? Personal example.
From someone you know.
Exactly. Oh, really? He's all over the shop. He's one day, we hope he'll figure it out. But okay, now I've got this category of things, and I've also got an audience. I've got the version of me 2 years ago. We're all unique individuals. We're all on our own path, but our paths are really similar to other people's paths. There is 100% a lot of mid to early career copywriters who are trying to figure out what to do next, what skills they need to learn, and how to solve certain problems. I can do that because I just did it.
Walk the walk.
Because I am 2 years ahead of my journey.
Yeah.
And the same thing goes for you. You could do, at this point, launch a side channel about making a YouTube channel, for example.
Well, interesting, because I think the thing that tipped me over into deciding, yes, I could do YouTube, was somebody said, you don't have to be the best. You don't have to know everything. You just need to know more than the people that need to know what you know.
100%. And that's where I think the what have I done the last 2 years exercise helps. How many years of musical theatre do you have in you at this point? You've got, I'm going to take a guess, a decade at least. At least. So that's a lot of things you can learn from, which means there are a lot of people who are on that journey, same as you, at different stages. In the same way, I have a decade of social media content creation and community management behind me. I can talk to early career people very easily and say, oh, okay, here's what I did. Here's what I've learned. You can't necessarily follow my road because that road doesn't necessarily exist anymore because it's 10 years ago. Things have changed.
But you know the pitfalls.
Exactly. And I think having that kind of structure of problem solved, ways to solve those problems, and ways to talk about solving those problems, it means I've done like the structural work. I call it the work before the work.
Yeah.
So when I sit down to write a post or write a script, I now have a framework for making some posts.
How important is authenticity? What does authenticity mean, perhaps?
That's an extremely good question. No one knows, I think. It needs to be true to you as a creator. It needs to be sincere in its engagement. Like, I am sincerely trying to be entertaining, but authenticity is what people believe in and buy into. Like, I
Even
think
if you have to fake it.
a little bit, yeah. Like Mr. Beast's videos, we mentioned him, Mr. Beast's biggest channel on YouTube. His videos are like super polished, and his thumbnails, he has like a thumbnail team who just work on the thumbnails of the videos, and they're all him doing this. Like very rigor mortis, but the videos themselves, feel authentic because it's just his way of doing things. But he's now realized, okay, has gotten too impersonal. He's getting himself in there a bit more personality, a bit more chaos, and those kind of things.
Yeah. So we can think of it a bit like those late night talk shows where we know there's a room of writers.
Exactly.
And each of them might have their own style, but we accept that it's coming out of the mouth of the host.
Yeah, it's one of the many Jimmys. Like it's 100% like coming out with that authorial tone of voice and that kind of creator. Because it's all, in those cases, in the cases of a social media account for a brand, like you're still working towards this central identity of, okay, this is what we want Telstra to be on this platform. There are just different ways of achieving that.
So if I were a writer, what are some ideas that might be useful for creating an online presence? Would it be examples of my work? Would it be talking to other people about how to write?
I think to a certain extent it depends on the platform. But one of the things I did that went particularly well was I took a screenshot of a post of mine that I did for Telstra that went really well, and I broke down why it worked. I said, okay, here's what I was trying to accomplish, here are the mechanics I used, and here is kind of like my hypothesis. And it was basically, some people send text as whole paragraphs. Some people send text as line by line. A was whole paragraph, B was line by line, and it was two types of people. Ha 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 ha. Like observational comedy, like the most broad, lowest denominator stuff. But my theory was, okay, one, it was quickly to understand. You can see the image and you get the joke or the bit, and the A or B tells you how to reply in the comments. You go, ha 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 ha, I am an A. Oh ha ha ha, it's tag Scott, you are such a B. Whatever. So
I have been called such a B.
honestly, yeah. So for a writer, it could be, here is a way to build a content strategy for a platform. So if we've spoken about, here are the ways to build out, explore your authorial voice. So here's how to figure out who you are as a writer. Here is what the editing process can be like. Here are 5 pitfalls for writing on Twitter, and those kind of things. Very, very simple, very basic, very quick to comprehend. And I think that's the other kind of challenge is for social media platforms, especially. There was a rule of thumb when I was working for a radio station, like the best talkback questions are ones for which you have an immediate answer. You don't want to make people think. It needs to be really quick, really gettable.
No dead air.
No dead air, exactly. But also, like, if you don't know how you feel about a talkback question instantly, you are not going to call. You're not going to spend 30 seconds going, oh, what do I think about this? I will now call the radio and share with them my opinion.
The wireless.
Exactly. I'm going to get on the blower. Same is true for social media.
So, for instance, with a musician, the natural thought is, well, they should perform. But they can also do exactly what you said for a writer about explain their process.
100%. I think so, because it's really interesting. Like, there are so many things, like if you're a talented musician, there are so many things that you'll take for granted that I, as someone who played guitar for 3 weeks and then complained that my fingers hurt and quit.
You haven't developed the calluses yet.
I didn't. I have such soft hands. It's a problem. I cannot play guitar. My delicate hands.
Methylated spirits.
Yeah.
To dry them out.
There we go.
Yeah.
Awesome. That's a perfect example. That's something you could take for granted as someone who's done with that. But like, that's holy shit. My mind is slightly blown by that. Like I had to reprocess. Oh, okay, cool. That would have really helped. If you're doing music for 10, 20, 30 years, there are so many things you take for granted that I, as a person who loves music, who loves guitar, who loves heavy metal, whatever, will find really interesting, because those peek behinds the process, they kind of speak to that escape from reality thing. Like, oh, okay, I could put methylated spirits on my finger. I could learn how to play guitar. I could finally become a rock god. Haha. And takes me along that journey.
So we should be looking at our world with fresh eyes.
100%.
Because we all do live in a niche, whether we acknowledge it or not. But as you said, we often take it for granted.
100%.
But because I'm constantly aware of how bizarre the world of theatre is. And there are a lot of things we take for granted, as you're saying. We make assumptions about how this job goes, but that's not how other jobs work.
Exactly, yeah. And that's all really interesting. And you can mine that for the entertainment side of things. Like, okay, here are 5 truly hilarious theatre habits that no one else truly understands. I remember when I was at uni, one of my fellow writing students was an actor, and she was the most actor I've ever met. Like, she fully laughed, did the head back laugh. When she sat on the ground, she did the kind of like, I'm going to sit with my legs like that. Like, you are such an actor, to the point where I go, thespians at her. But like, that's awesome. Like, that's a slice of a world that I don't understand. And
So maybe bizarre insights are useful for...
bangers, bizarre insights are money, I think, generally, because there's something that people in that world can go, oh yeah, we recognize, and that's what you want. You want that spark of recognition. People who feel seen go, yeah, that is me. That's really powerful. But then it's also like people who are outside go, okay, that's just funny. Let's just play along. Let's just listen here. But and in the process, they may see things that they see in themselves anyway. Because like, I think one of the really powerful paradoxes to kind of get your head around is that the more specific the thing, the more relatable it is. Broad is not relatable because it's too broad. That people will see themselves in very specific details in ways you don't expect. I don't need to be part of the theatre world to see myself in a very particular niche thing, because it may spark a recognition about something writers do, or about the way marketers act, because all these niches I'm part of, or just going about my daily life.
We're all just different colours of crazy.
Exactly. And like, you know, as the example, if you do a post about thespians sit like this, I'm like, okay, what weird ways do I sit? Like, why do I always have like my foot up here? Like, when I get in the car, why do I put my foot up on the thing? Not driving, passenger seat. Like, what are my weird sitting habits that I have? I have them. I'm a person with limbs. But in that specificity, you will find relatability. Because what you offer is that spark of recognition. That's beautiful. People want that.
Any of us who are ambitious immediately go to what's in it for me, but we should be thinking about our audience, about what's in it for them.
100%, because that's how you'll get the what's in it for you.
And I like the idea of Venn diagrams. Everything for me comes down to Venn diagrams.
We need Venn diagrams.
So it's what's in it for me, what's in it for them, and then that's how
you find that thing. And
that's our platform.
Exactly. That's all you need to get started, because that will give you enough to go, oh, okay, this isn't working. I think the benefit of having a clearly defined strategy, even if it's not the most refined, not the most specific, not the most insightful, not the most whatever, it gives you something to prove wrong. And you want to find out what's working, what doesn't work, as quickly as possible. And having a clearly defined strategy, or even just a reckon. It can be, I reckon this will do well. I reckon this will work. And then you can do that for 3 months and go, this reckon didn't bear out. Time to get a new reckon, and that kind of thing. So having that clear strategy, if nothing else, it'll give you something to prove wrong. It gives you a North Star to work towards.
The other thing I made a choice about very early was I wanted the channel to be a repository of information. So it wasn't just topical. And interestingly, just this past month, all of a sudden a number of old videos have kind of blown up.
Yeah, right.
They're still relevant for people to go back and and look. And that was a choice I made early as well.
Evergreen is a fantastic way to go. That's a really good long value play.
Yeah.
I think evergreen videos, evergreen topics, evergreen content, full stop, really valuable. And building up that backlog of stuff that is always going to be helpful is incredibly useful. When I go back to something you mentioned at the top of that, is like, you're making this video for you. Do that. When I was making social stuff all the time, I would have a rule of, okay, for every 5 to 10 posts that I do are very strategic, I'm doing one just for me. And I do not care how it performs. And I told my manager, okay, I said very early on, I'm going to do some stuff that's just for me. And he goes, yeah, that's fair. Like, just do it on a quiet day or do it on a small platform, do it on Twitter, whatever. And that was fun because you need things that are just for you. In my very first job, I was working for a media outlet. And there's one thing I did. I didn't tell anyone I was doing it. It was just for me. Part of my job was scheduling the stories on Twitter to be published later in the day. And I scheduled every story about marijuana for 4:20 p.m. because 4:20 is the time to smoke weed.
Oh, okay.
4:20 p.m. is kind of 4:20 blaze it. I did that. At the time, 7-Eleven, the franchises were getting investigated for not paying employees properly. So I scheduled every single story about business regulation for 7-Eleven, AM or PM. And this is the one I shouldn't admit, but I scheduled every story for about terrorism for 9/11, AM or PM. Every single one. No one noticed, but it made me giggle.
It's an Easter egg for you.
Exactly. It's a small thing just for me. And like when I was making social media stuff every day, I did post just for me. Because at the end of the day, I'm still a creative. I'm still an artist, even if my art is dumb JPEGs. There needs to be things that make you happy.
I'm kind of like that with my humor on my channel. In some ways, I don't know if anyone's going to laugh at it.
Exactly.
Gives me a chuckle.
And that's all it needs to be. Like, I think it's one of those things, like, if you sincerely find it funny, if you sincerely enjoy it, there will be someone else who does. The things that are just for you can often be the most successful or the most funny or the ones, like, only a small percentage of your audience will like it, but they will love it. And they will
I guess whether that's because of that authenticity factor.
Exactly, yeah.
It's not as curated or filtered, perhaps.
Exactly. And I think in the act of creating and by being true to what you want to make and being particular to you, you're putting stuff out in the world is a way of finding people who think the same and who care about the same things and want the same things in life. And that can be beautiful. That can be fantastic.
So is there a secret to cutting through?
No. I wish. Again, if there was, I would not be here. I think in my experience, the things that have cut through the most are the things that spark that feeling of recognition, like of feeling seen. That is the way to cut through. It mightn't get you the biggest numbers, it mightn't get you the hottest reach or whatever, but it will get you the people who care and people who are invested in what you're doing. I think that authenticity is key and that kind of relatability is key, but also be entertaining. Like humor cuts through nothing else, I think.
So is there one piece of information we haven't covered yet, one piece of wisdom about leveraging social media for artists, for smaller creators?
I think the most useful one is make a bunch of stuff. There's that classic story that gets thrown around. It's either about a photography class or a pottery class. Half the class were told, okay, end of semester, you're going to be graded on quantity, and the other half of the class will be graded on quality. And the story goes that the half the class that graded it on quality agonized over their stuff, trying to find the one perfect photo or the one perfect pot, and submitted their one thing. And the people who graded on quantity made the better stuff, because rather than agonizing over one, they were taking hundreds of photos, making hundreds of pots. In the process, they found the fantastic one. And I think in a lot of ways, social media platforms are similar. Your mileage will vary, but like just make stuff, make heaps of stuff, publish it, get used to the act of having idea, creating thing to fit that idea, finishing, publishing, go. Yeah, it's also like what platform you're excited about. I think if you are sincerely interested in a platform, it really helps. If you sincerely find TikTok interesting, you will get out of bed to make content for that platform before you get out of bed to make content for Instagram, even if some part of your brain is going, Instagram is a better platform fit for my content. Like, who cares? Like, you need to want to be there.
Motivated.
Yeah. The other part of it is like, it's a long game. It's, there are no shortcuts. And the thing I tell my students at the year, like, when we'll be talking about social media platforms, it's okay to not be on them. Just be deliberate about why you're not on them. Like, you can not care 100%. If you just want to write your novel in the woods, be by yourself, awesome, by all means, go for it. If you do want to build an audience, there are other ways to do it. I just yesterday bought a book called 33 Ways to Promote Yourself Without Social Media by Tess McCabe. And I'm reading through that now. It seems really interesting. So you don't have to be on these platforms. Just know why you're not doing it. And like, if you do want to promote yourself, but you also don't want to be on these platforms, be aware that, there are other ways to do it. It might just be of smaller scale. It might be more local and those kind of things. You are giving up something, but you're not giving up on it entirely.
Because I guess the advantage of platforms is reach, potential reach.
Potential reach. The other side of it is like, at the end of the day, you are working for those platforms. By making videos for YouTube, you're working for YouTube. YouTube will be the end beneficiary. And you're just trying to carve out a little bit of that. And the same is true for all these other platforms. And that's the way they grow. And that's the way they kind of exploit creators to a certain degree. The one other bit of wisdom that I saw 2 days ago was someone on a newsletter platform saying that they see so many writers complain about only having, I only have 60 subscribers. It's failing. And then saying, this guy said, I used to run poetry readings in a cafe and 10 people showing up was a great outcome. 30 people was a sellout of this space. And so having 60 readers is amazing. Are you kidding? People would have killed with that back in the day. I can't remember the exact stats anymore, but even having a few hundred viewers on each video is above average. So don't just see the million views and the million followers and go, I'm not Zendaya.
Because we can get, I think we can get obsessed with the validation of numbers. But it's interesting to put it back into a real world perspective.
That's what I think coming down to community is what motivates me the most now, at least. The one post that went massive viral that I did that I feel personally proud of is I was working for Telstra and we had just run all these really kind of this series of videos parodying 5G conspiracy theories, which was a great series of videos. I didn't work on that one. But so we were at this place where we were tonally making jokes about 5G conspiracies. And at the time, then President Donald Trump tweeted that he had COVID. So I quote tweeted that as Telstra saying, don't even try and blame 5G for this. Fantastic post, reached like 3 million people, got right in the news. That one I'm proud of because it's very funny.
Catching the zeitgeist.
Exactly. But all the other ones that went really well, I mentioned that post about some people text like this, getting like 1.6 million, reaching over 1 million people. It's a fine joke. I don't feel super proud of it. Things that went kind of well for me personally, much smaller scale, much more niche, more narrow. It's like the numbers are fun to see go up, but they're not the be all end all. And I think like now, personally, I think that community is much exponentially more important. And I think that's where social media platforms are going. Like I mentioned earlier, like we mentioned, like dark social group chats are much more important now for sharing online because that's how regular people share stuff. And I think if you can build a small community of people who you are sincerely helping and who are sincerely engaging with your stuff for the betterment of their own life in some way is where it's at. It's hard to compete on scale of entertainment. It's hard to compete with meme pages for quick laughs. But if you can build that small community, even if it's 10 people, that's enriching, I think. There's more to be gained from that as a person, let alone not just as a creator on social media.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure. This is fun.
Yeah. Now, if you have any burning questions, leave them in the comments and I'll try to lure Cory back to answer them. At the very least, show him some love so he knows you appreciate his time. But for now, thank you so much for watching. I do love you. Get out there. Be brilliant.